May your Christmas be small this year. That's my wish for you. May your Christmas be small. It's an odd wish, borrowed from Reverend Dr. Yolanda Pierce, and I borrowed it for you, my people, whom I love so much. May your Christmas be small. It's an odd wish because it's counterintuitive. Bigger is what we've been taught to want. And no one wants to feel small, so we shape our lives around the pursuit of more. But my wish for you today, my people whom I love, is that your Christmas will be small. We see the folly of big every year. And this year was no exception. I don't need to give you examples of the folly of big. You can think of them in your own life. The folly of big has especially shown up as parts of the church have given in to the temptation of political power. Supporting military might, economic dominance, and harmful forms of authority, and claiming to do so in the name of Jesus, who did not cling to his divine power, but emptied himself of it to become like us. We all have seen the folly of big, and it's in the church too. Some have said that these kinds of power are okay for the church to wield because they help win people for Jesus. It's the whole the ends justify the means thing. Britt Henry Nouwen says that grasping for power and bigness is the greatest temptation of all. He says the temptation to consider power an apt instrument for the proclamation of the gospel is the greatest temptation of all. With this rationalization, crusades took place, inquisitions were organized, native people were enslaved, positions of great influence were desired, and yet it all fell to folly. Every time we see a major crisis in the church, and we are in the midst of one now, we always see, Nouwen says, that a major cause of rupture is the power exercised by those who claim to be followers of the poor and the powerless Jesus. Yes, some of you might be saying, down with those power-hungry people, because I know many of us have been hurt by that same folly that I just talked about. But I'm not going to let you off the hook here. The temptation to pursue the big is in all of us, and it is irresistible at times. What makes that temptation of power, the temptation to pursue big, what makes it irresistible? Henry Nouwen goes on to say that maybe it is that power offers an easy substitute for the hard task of love. It seems easier to be God than to love God. It seems easier to control people rather than to love people. It seems easier to own life than to love life. Love is the harder work. Love is the smaller work. It's what happened in Mary when Jesus came into this world as the smallest catalyst of all. A single embryo hidden inside the womb of a poor Jewish girl in Palestine. Love is small. Power is great, but it doesn't hold a candle to the smallness of love. So may your Christmas be small this year. May you find ways to turn your back on the pursuit of the big to see the small that is in front of you. The small that is there in the birth of Christ, the small that is there in the quiet moments, the small that lives deep in your heart. And now these words again from Reverend Dr. Yolanda Pierce, may your Christmas be small. May your Christmas be so small this year that you experience it like Mary did over 2,000 years ago, tenderly holding 5 or 6 pounds of a warm baby boy who was wrapped in brown flesh, swaddled in cloth, and safely tucked into the crook of his mother's arms. May your Christmas be so small this year that it feels like the grains of sand you hold at the beach, each tiny particle, infinite in number, slipping through the cracks and crevices of your fingers. And so you stand in awe of a creator who numbers each tiny grain of sand and each gigantic star in the sky. May your Christmas be so small this year that it reminds you of the wafer and the communion cup, the tiny meal that is an abundant feast. And as you receive that bit of bread and consume the barely there sip of juice, may you join the small community of remembrance and resistance. May your Christmas be so small this year that it resembles a tiny blade of grass or a dainty weed growing in the cracks of a Brooklyn sidewalk. And like this seemingly insignificant piece of vegetation, may you withstand the heels which attempt to crush your spirit and your joy, living to thrive in even the harshest of circumstances. May your Christmas be so small this year that your only gift is the tiny candle that you cradle in your hands, a flame so small but so powerful that it shines bright and brings warmth when held close, a tiny light that even darkness cannot consume. May your Christmas be so small this year that it is distilled to its purest essence, a divine love so generous that it takes the form of a fragile, vulnerable, helpless humanity. A love that comes in the flesh of a helpless baby, not a triumphant king. A love that must be nursed, nurtured, and cherished. A love so small that it gently infiltrates the unseen scars and wounds that we carry and begins to knit us together again.